Okay. All right. Now are we good to go?
Should be. And I will go backstage. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Good morning and welcome. Super excited to be here with you on this Friday to talk about STEAM, one of my favorite topics. So glad that you could join us for a little bit of your morning and hoping that you enjoyed the keynote speaker as much as I did. So thanks for allowing me to be here today. I am Dr. Tabitha Thompson. I am a part of the early learning department at the Sacramento County Office of Ed, so up north in our wonderful state. And so I would love to make sure that we are going to be pretty interactive today. So I've got some information to share. There'll be an opportunity for us to have a discussion at the end. I've embedded some videos also as part of this presentation. And then I will also make sure that it is available. So all of the PowerPoints you see here, along with the videos that are a part of it, will be available in the resource tab. And along the way, you're going to see the Q&A button. So feel free to put some questions in there as we journey along. And then also you'll see a chat button. So if you want to just kind of make those comments as the presentation goes on, again, feel free to do that as well. I have a friend that's helping me monitor the chat. So she'll be, Miss Lisa will be doing that as we spend the next hour together. So with that, I would love to know who's in the room. So if you'll do me a favor and just kind of give me maybe one of the titles that you hold in terms of your work position or a setting that you're currently supporting children or families in. That just allows me to know who's in the room so that I can gear some of the presentation exactly to the audience that's here. So good morning again. I see a teacher, there's a librarian, a child care advocate, an early learning coach, program directors are here, our paraeducator co-teachers, another instructional coach, or early learning coach. Awesome. Some directors, some coaches, principals. Looks like from up and down the state. Inclusion specialists. Awesome. Now you're speaking my language. Director of facilities. So awesome. So again, thank you guys. Again, feel free to throw things in the chat as you want to make comments, and then also in the Q&A. And again, I will pause throughout to make sure that I capture those. Part of what I would also love to do is have that discussion at the end. So I will try and make sure that I present information, which will include the videos, and then leave some time at the end for us to actually chat, have a virtual chat. So with that, let's get started to talk about STEM. So we've got a couple of learning objectives today. One is to really understand what STEAM looks like in an early childhood setting. So we'll talk about how we learn science, technology, engineering, art, and math naturally in our everyday routines and play. We'll explore some age-appropriate examples of STEAM activities, and then we're going to recognize that early STEAM learning really is about that exploration that children, our youngest learners, are very adept and wish to do, more so than memorizing facts and using kind of those screens and devices. Our second learning objective is to really explore some hands-on activities that use common household items. So as we're thinking about supporting parents who are supporting STEAM activities in the house, we want to really make sure that access to items aren't a barrier for being able to do STEAM activities. We're going to gather some knowledge about printable and take-home activity cards that extend that learning beyond the classroom. And we're going to see a couple of video demonstrations of some activities that really boost the confidence in doing them with your child. So again, this is geared toward educators who are likely supporting families who are doing STEM activities at home. So that's the lens that we're kind of thinking through from today. Our third objective is really exploring how play and exploration really supports that learning. So how is it that we are using play as specific to STEAM activities? It's a really powerful tool for that brain development and learning in young children. And then how those STEAM concepts are bedded in those play-based experiences. Then we're going to talk about how to ask those open-ended questions and really make those observations that deepen your child or your student's thinking. And then our fourth objective is to look at Building that confidence. So we know that when our kids are confident, they tend to explore and they're curious. And so we'll reflect on our own role as their first and most important teacher, and then really think about those strategies that really encourage that curiosity and that exploration, even if we don't sometimes have all of the answers. And it's okay to not have all the answers. So, thinking about how we respond to our children's questions with curiosity, some of those I wonder statements, and then really creating that safe environment for them to explore ideas together. Again, even when sometimes we don't have all of the answers. So, what is STEAM? STEAM starts with an S, and that S stands for science. And so, if you are thinking about early learning, as it relates to our youngest learners, we're really thinking about science as observing the world around them. So it doesn't have to be too fancy, too high tech, but what are those things that our youngest learners naturally love to do, like noticing bugs, the weather changes, plants growing. And then through the science part of STEAM, we're also promoting that curiosity with that hands on exploration with things like mixing colors and exploring with water and feeling like those different textures of a variety of things. Through science, we're also helping kids learn how to ask those clarifying questions and really test their ideas by making some predictions. Some may be bold and wild, and then seeing what happens after they make those predictions. The T in STEAM stands for technology. And so when we think about technology, oftentimes we are thinking about phones and computers and those sorts of things. But in STEAM, we're actually wanting to introduce our kids to some very simple tools and devices that help solve problems. So when you think about early childhood environments, we have simple tools and devices such as magnifying glasses, pulleys and levers, the balancing beam, and even some cause and effect toys that can stimulate that exploration through technology. And we're really wanting to encourage children to explore how things work and what happens when they push a button or they turn a knob. Through the technology part of STEAM, we're also hoping to build that early understanding of how we as humans use technology many times to make our lives easier or more fun. And so, as you think about technology and think about our youngest learners, many of them have access to devices that would definitely be considered technology. But what about some of those simple tools that we're using in our classrooms that are also classified as technology? And then we go to the E in STEAM, and that's engineering. And it's such a big word for our little littles, but it's thinking about how do we design and build with materials. And when we think of materials, this is blocks, this is paper, recycled items are always fun to build with. And this is really the part of STEAM that's encouraging that problem solving. So, how are we figuring out how to build, whether it's towers, how to build bridges, those sorts of things? Uh-oh, I'm hearing that there. Let me stop and share because Lisa says there's a black box on my screen. Okay, hopefully that helped. I stopped sharing and reshared. Let me. Okay, hopefully that helped. The other pieces of engineering is supporting that creativity. So allowing our kids really to invent, to test, to predict, and really improve their ideas through trial and error. So if something happens in terms of building and how they're figuring out things, maybe it doesn't isn't maybe the successful at the onset, but how do we keep trying until we engineer something that's actually perfect in the eyes of our children? So this is always really fun because again, it's really not about having that final answer or that best answer. Engineering is really about those predictions and that problem solving, which is always really fun for this age group. Okay, Lisa said we fixed it. Thank you for that, Miss Lisa. And then A, which is always, always fun for our littles, is art. And we do this naturally in our early learning environments. And art really encourages our kids to think creatively and solve problems in new ways with a variety of different materials. It allows them to explore their thoughts and emotions when they may not yet have those words. In thinking about our focus, our intentional focus on inclusion, art ends up playing a really big part for some of our kids that have varying abilities. And so if they don't yet have the language or they are developing language, art tends to be a way for them to be able to navigate their emotions and their thoughts using some of those other creative means. It also helps children see beauty and design and meaning in the world around them, and also assists with some of those fine motor skills, that visual learning, and again, that emotional development. Because if I don't have the words to tell you how I'm feeling, I could possibly use some paint or some crayons or markers to be able to express to you what I'm feeling in these moments. And then lastly, it's math. We all love math. Math is happening around us all the time in our day to day routines. And so, in our STEAM activities and the math portion of it, it really helps children practice counting or sorting by size. We may be sorting by color or recognizing patterns in the environment. And it also introduces a concept of measurement. And again, you can use everyday items like cups and rulers and toys to be able to do those measurements, because at our this particular age they may not yet be using a ruler or a measuring tape or things like that, but they can absolutely use Legos to maybe measure how tall their structures are. And then we're also starting to build that really early number sense and that logical thinking, and we can do this through games and puzzles and really those play-based activities that again allow our students to start to learn some of those math concepts through a play-based experience. So I am going to pause for just a second to see if there's anything I needed to address in the chat. Miss Lisa, let me know if there's anything you're seeing. Thank you for answering that question about what that E is, and that is engineering. All right, so some of the things we are wanting to think through in terms of STEAM and what it really does for our students, it really builds that problem solving skills, that capacity to think critically. When we ask them, what will happen if? And we give that wait time for those little brains to think about, I don't know what would happen. And guess what? There's not a right or wrong answer. And when we're asking, or how can I fix this? And so thinking through what kind of play-based experiences and activities can we create where our youngest learners are able to problem solve through trial and error, such as building that tower that just keeps falling. And maybe there's some frustration because it keeps falling. And then they learn to be persistent. And maybe the next time they'll try a new strategy so that it doesn't fall. And then we're thinking about how problem solving through STEM also really lays that foundation for logical thinking and that decision making practices that happen literally in our everyday lives and our routines. And so STEAM, when it has many components in it, really the foundational is for our youngest learners to start to think through that logical thinking and those decision making practices. It also builds that curiosity and that creativity. Because again, there's not a right or wrong answer. And so through our STEAM experiences, we're really inviting our kids to explore, to ask those questions, and possibly even come up with their own ideas. And through activities, which we're going to explore in just a little bit, like mixing colors or building blocks, we tap into that desire to experiment and create and persevere through those trial and errors, and maybe come up with our own ideas of how to create those structures and things like that with many different types of materials. We are always encouraging through STEAM to have that open-ended play where our kids are not structured and it's not predictable, and that they can come up with many different ways to get to the one right answer that's fitting for them. This really does build confidence, it builds imagination in our youngest students, and it allows them to understand that maybe there's not a right answer, and they'll keep trying for different ways to get to a particular answer that's suiting and fitting for them in that particular situation. So then as we're building confidence, our kids will explore, they'll be curious, they'll be creative, and then they'll want to explore some more, which is what we absolutely love for them to do. Our STEAM activities also strengthen language and communication, which we all know as educators in the early learning field is critical for our kids to be able to express themselves, communicate with their peers, communicate with adults, and be able to express themselves, not always through the verbal language, but what is it and what happens when kids are able to describe what they're doing, describe what they're making or discovering, and they're also able to build that vocabulary and that expressive language um, as they're doing the hands-on exploration of STEAM activities. When we are thinking about our peers that may not have as much language or are nonverbal, it is again those hands-on activities and that creative way of doing things that we might also be able to be inclusive of our peers that might not have that language development yet or may have varying abilities. We're also encouraging our kids through these STEAM activities to ask questions, explore their own thinking, engage in conversations with adults and peers, and really thinking about how do we make those predictions? How do we tell those stories about maybe something that they've built that also start to develop their early literacy skills. So as they're building the tower, maybe they're telling a story of where the tower leads and how tall and how and why they've decided that it's that tall. And they're starting to describe those patterns of why they use a particular kind of block or a particular size of a block as they're making and exploring those towers or their creations. So definitely a lot of language and a lot of communication is strengthened through our STEAM activities. It also prepares children for future learning. So again, that early exposure really builds that sound, solid foundation for future successes and beyond. It really, STEAM activities really do support that key readiness skills, such as following instructions, working on being collaborative, and really thinking outside of the box. So again, there's not always one answer or one way to do things in our STEAM activities, and that creates that confidence that students are able to see that their creation or their idea or their prediction is just as good as their peers, and that gives them that perseverance to be able to feel confident and curious and engage in even more STEAM activities as they journey along. So as we're thinking about whether we are an educator or an adult or family, how are some of the ways in which we can provide the questioning to elicit that curiosity from our children as they are exploring some of the STEAM activities? And a couple of phrases come to mind. And so as you're exploring, whether it is through your literature and you're reading a book, some of the ways in which you can elicit those responses are phrases such as, what do you think will happen? And again, there's never a right or wrong answer. It's just what that child thinks will happen next. And so we're always celebrating their effort to even think of an answer when we ask a question like, why did that happen? And as an educator, you're got your curiosity going and they do too. And so kids can have a response to all of those questions because again, there's not a right or wrong answer. And we're constantly encouraging our kids to answer just based on their own thinking. Also saying, how can we fix this? So as you're doing those hands-on creations, and maybe they didn't land where a child thought they were going to land, or it didn't quite look the way that a child thought it was going to look, there's an opportunity to do those trial and error explorations where you say to them, how can we fix it? Can we try it another way? And so as you're thinking about that, we always want to celebrate their effort and not just the result. So the ability that they actually tried to do a hands-on exploration or an experiment is what we're really grateful for, and that will extend their learning, even if the result isn't what the student wanted the result to be. So again, always celebrating that effort. So as we think about, again, this could be a home setting or a classroom setting, want to think about a couple of activities here that are definitely considered STEAM. And as we look at the video for these, think about your own particular setting in which you support students and how you might gear this towards your students. You'll know your students best, you know what materials you may have available and what your kids are interested in that might create, again, that extension of learning. So the first interactive activity is that sink or float. And really this objective is to really explore that scientific thinking. What are the predictions you can make? How can you test your predictions? And then what's the foundation for the discussion that could happen afterwards once you do test some things? So some of the things that you'll need for this particular activity or could use for this particular activity is a water bin. And then any household items that you can think of or items that are in your classroom that you can think of, such as a spoon, a toy, a leaf, or again, invite your students to be a part of deciding which activities you guys will test to see if they sink or float. Really great idea also to chart out what kids are thinking. And so as they make their predictions on each item, there's a colorful visual graphic that depicts which items kids think will sink, which will float, and then you can test them, and then you can talk about the results. So here's a quick video again. Think about as you're watching this video, how could you tailor it to your own environment, your own audience of young learners to make it relevant, to make it engaging, and to make it interesting so that they are interested in the science part of the thinking and whether particular items will sink or float. So this is a quick one, about 3 minutes. Oh, Lisa just alerted me that there is no sound. So let me stop our share and share again. We tested this before, but technology sometimes. Okay, so let's try this again.
Healthy music for a child's heart, body, and mind.
Float or sink.
Water table if you're able. Water table, what do you think? Water table if you're able. Show us if it floats or sinks. Take a little spoon and you drop it in the water. Is it gonna float or sink? If it stays afloat, it is lighter than the water. Heavier than water, it sinks. Is it so heavy that it just might sink? Is it so heavy that it just might sink? What's your vote? Water table if you're able. Water table, what do you think? Water table if you're able. Show us if it floats or sinks. Take a little cup and you drop it in the water. Is it gonna float or sink? If it stays afloat, it is lighter than the water. Heavier than water, it sinks. Is it so heavy that it just might sink? Is it so heavy that it just might sink?
So in the interest of time, I'm going to stop us there, but I want you to think about how either showing this video as part of the exploration time when you're going to do the sink or float might, again, with the music and the visual might also be engaging for your students. And then have them think about what items they want to test to see if they sink or float. So if you are a part of Google, YouTube, those sorts of things, there are a ton of videos that do preschool specific sink or float activities. But again, I wanted to just show you a tidbit of that one just so that you get kind of an idea of how you can also use some of the technology and the videos and things like that to engage your students and get them curious about the activity of sink or float that you are going to engage in. So the second interactive activity is thinking about a tower challenge. So again, this builds in the components of engineering and math. And again, depending on what kinds of materials you have available in your classroom or your home setting, blocks could be a possibility, cups, paper, towel rolls, toilet tissue rolls, all of those things or anything recyclable could be a part of how you encourage and invite your students to be a part of the tower challenge. So the thought is, and the objective is to build the tallest and or strongest tower. And so you're thinking about how your students will test stability. You're maybe counting the items as you are building. And if you have different groups doing this activity at the same time, you may compare designs. And so each group may have a bit of a discussion on how they came up with their design and what they were thinking and how they collaborated together to explore either building it tall or building it strong. And so this again is one of those really open-ended exploration activities where there isn't a right answer, building that confidence in your students that they too can think of a design, create it, and there's trial and error to keep creating until they can persevere to build maybe the tallest or the strongest tower that they think that they can build.
Who's up for a challenge? Squeaks and I love to build things. Sometimes we build forts out of pillows or castles out of blocks. And sometimes we snap together plastic bricks and make spaceships. But today, we're going to use cups. Yep, just cups. And Squeaks and I have decided to build the tallest stack of cups that we can. We know from playing with blocks that it's best to build our stack on a flat, hard surface, like a piece of floor that doesn't have any carpet on it. And to make things easier, we're going to use cups that are all the same size. And we're going to use plastic cups. Paper cups would work too, but just never glass. All right, Squeaks, let the cup stacking begin. First, we'll start by putting a cup upside down on our table. You can use a floor or a table at home. Next, we'll put another cup on top. We'll need to put this one right side up so it doesn't slide down on top of the first one. Now, we'll carefully set another cup, cup number 3, upside down on top of number 2. Cup number 4 goes on top, right side up. Things are getting a little wobbly. And cup number 5 goes on successfully. Now, let's see if we can put cup number 6 on top. Oh, down it goes. So by making a simple stack of cups, one on top of the other, we were able to build a tower that was 5 cups high before it fell over. But what can we do to build a tower that's even taller? We'll need to find a way to make our stack of cups more stable. If our stack of cups is stable, that means it won't wobble and sway like our last stack did. So it shouldn't fall over as easily. So this time, let's try something different. Let's start with 3 cups upside down on the table. Now we'll put 2 cups also upside down on top of those. And we'll put 1 more cup on top. Look, we made a pyramid. This stack is 1, 2, 3 cups tall. Do you see how our pyramid of cups is shaped like a triangle? It has a big wide base or bottom. That wide base is a reason that a pyramid and our second stack of cups is so stable. You can test this out for yourself, but not just with cups, with you. Stand up for a minute. Now try to stand on 1 foot. Do you wobble back and forth a little? Now try standing on both feet. It's probably easier to stand on 2 feet, right? That's because 2 feet make a wider base than 1 foot. Your weight is spread out between both feet instead of being all on 1 foot. The same thing is true when you're building something, whether it's a stack of plastic cups or a big city skyscraper. In our first tower, the weight of the stack was on 1 cup on the bottom. But in our second try, the weight of the stack pushed down on 3 cups that were spread apart instead of just 1. A wide base helps to spread out the weight of what's on top of it and makes whatever you're building more stable. So let's try one more building using an even wider base. We'll put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cups on the table. Then we'll pile 4 more on those. Then 3, then 2, and then 1 on top. Ha! This time our pyramid is 5 cups high. In fact, if we start with even more cups on the bottom of our pyramid, you can build even higher. That wider base makes it possible to build a taller structure. A wide base is useful for more than just stacking cups. Some of the most stable buildings in the world are shaped like pyramids. This building is one of the tallest in San Francisco and is stable enough to stay up during an earthquake. So are you excited to build your own stack of cups? Ask a grown-up to help you find some cups and you're ready to get stacking. Thanks for joining us on SciShow Kids. Do you have a question for us about buildings or anything else? If you do, ask someone to help you. Leave a comment down below or send us an email to kids@scishow.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time here at the fort.
So think about how you can possibly use that video to engage your students before you do something like a tower challenge. Some of the questions you could ask about how they want to design, the items that they want to use, what are their predictions for how many levels of the tower will stand still and be stable before it falls over. Think about the vocabulary that you can explore with your students. One of the words that came up in that video was stable, and she explained it. And then she did a couple different versions, so that trial and error, so that when it fell down or when it was not as stable as she wanted, those are those trial and errors that we want our kids to go through so that they persevere and they're still wanting to try again to get that perfect tower that they think is perfect for it to be strong and tall. So again, thinking about your own setting, how can you tailor that to your own particular audience? And again, a variety of items can be used, whether it's Legos, markers, some art supplies, any of those things can be used to do a tower challenge. And then the third interactive activity, again, this is really around science, that discovering of cause and effect, and what do we think about color theory. Some materials that you could potentially use are food coloring, water, clear cups. And we really want to have them think about what happens when we mix colors. How do we discover new colors? What are their predictions for the outcomes when we mix colors together? And then we want them to do that trial and error where they do different combinations. Because again, there's no right or wrong answer in any of these interactive activities. So one student may try a combination of a couple of colors, another may try all the colors together, another may decide that two colors is all that they want to do. And so you want to, again, just encourage that exploration and those predictions, and then those really rich conversations with those open-ended questions to really start them to thinking about what does happen when we do science.
Super simple songs.
Take some blue, take some yellow, mix them together. What do you get? Blue and yellow make green. 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 Take some red, take some yellow, mix them together. What do you get? Red and yellow make orange. 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 Take some blue, take some red, mix them together. What do you get? Blue and red make purple. Blue and red make purple. Blue and red make purple.
So again, as you think about your own particular setting and your own particular audience, how would you be able to use a video that includes very lively and engaging music to be able to engage your students in the thought about mixing colors together and their predictions on how that works and what the outcomes are going to be on that. And then you may also engage them in a discussion on, are we going to use paint? Are we going to use markers? Are there other things that we would like to use, such as glitter, mixing together to form a different color combination? So again, our students are very, very, very interested and engaged when it comes to art already naturally at this younger age. And so there's definitely some different ways that you can do the color exploration with them. And then our last one is probably my favorite. It's snack sorting. Thinking about the learning that is happening here is those math concepts of counting, classifying, that pattern recognition could also be the onset of that early number sense if you're also counting as you go along, that one-on-one correspondence, those sorts of things. And you can use a variety of materials for this interactive STEAM activity. Cereal works, crackers work, fruit pieces work, and really you're thinking about how you are supporting students as they sort. They can sort by color, they can sort by shape, they can sort by type of snack. They can count as they do their sorting, they can make patterns as they do their sorting, and really thinking about how this again is encouraging them to use some of their mathematical reasoning and things like that as a part of a STEAM activity. And this one uses Skittles, and all of our kids probably love Skittles, so this is a fun one. So again, very simple, very fun, and so many different ways that you could do this particular one. Skittles has many, many colors. So maybe you explore one round, if you will, where there's all yellow and maybe 2 orange. And then the next round has maybe an equal number of each color, and there's a combination of different colors. And you ask the kids, what do you think is going to happen? And you're, charting what their responses are. And their eyes are lighting up because the middle of this paper plate is going to be a million different colors based on what they choose to do as part of the activity. So again, this is always a fun one, a rather simple one. It's got water and then again, whatever material in terms of the candy or food item that you choose to use. So very, very cute one to do. And then next, we're thinking about building and those problem solving aspects and that spatial awareness and that spatial thinking and that persistence. So as we think about building, whether it's a bridge, a tower, what are those recyclable items that they could be using? How are we incorporating the idea of recycling with our students and having those conversations? And so some of the things that you might explore using are those paper towel rolls, popsicle sticks, blocks, Legos, those sorts of things. And then you're using those materials to build a bridge that can hold a variety of things. So the real goal around this is, can your bridge hold a toy car? Would it be able to hold a stuffed animal? And that the other items are maybe some other items that your students come up with to test and predict whether or not their bridge would be able to hold those items. So again, lots of variations that can happen with this STEAM activity, lots of ways in which your kids can lead this activity because they can decide on which materials are being used, decide on which items are being tested for the bridge, and then you can have some really lengthy and hopefully robust conversations about what do you think will happen? How can we make it stronger? How can we fix it if the bridge doesn't hold particular items?
guys, Squeaks and I were just playing with some blocks. You know, it may not seem like it, but the cities and towns that we live in are all built using the same rules as our little pretend village over here. It's just that the real ones are bigger. And one of our viewers, 6-year-old Hannah from the UK, wanted to know how some of the things that we build stay standing. So she sent us a really great question. Why are bridges so strong? Excellent question. Sometimes when a road or railroad track needs to go across something big like a river or a deep valley, experts called engineers design and build bridges to do that job. And bridges can be really busy. Take, for example, what's said to be the world's busiest bridge, the George Washington Bridge in New York City. Look at all those cars and trucks. It has to be pretty sturdy to carry so many people and cars. For a bridge to carry that much weight, it has to be built of special material like iron and steel. But it takes more than tough materials to make a strong bridge. So let's look at how bridges work. One very simple kind of bridge is called a beam bridge. When we say simple, we really do mean simple. A beam bridge can be just a log that you use to walk across a stream. Or put a long strip of cardboard between two short blocks. That's a beam bridge too. All bridges can hold a certain amount of weight, but what happens if we put too much weight on a beam bridge? Let's find out. It collapses. So a bridge that carries trucks and cars, which are very heavy, would have to be stronger than a bridge that carries bikes or people on foot, which are lighter. So how do we make stronger bridges? Well, over time, people have learned that certain shapes can be used to make stronger bridges. Take a look at this railroad bridge. It has to be strong because it carries trains. What shape do you see? That's right, triangles. And that's not by accident. The fact is, triangles are really strong shapes for building. If you put force on one side of a triangle, it bends. But if you put force on its point, it keeps its shape. That's because the two sides of the triangle are pushed down by the force, and the bottom gets stretched out to both sides. Each side feels the force, but none of them bends. And this makes the triangle a really sturdy and stable shape. This is why you'll see lots of triangles in bridges, both above the part that you actually travel on, called the deck, and below it. The long string of triangles that you see in a bridge is called a truss. Trusses help a bridge spread out the weight that it has to carry. But not all bridges are made of trusses. If a bridge has to cross a really wide body of water, it might be too difficult or expensive to build a truss bridge. So engineers design another kind of bridge called a suspension bridge. The Golden Gate Bridge in California is a great example of a suspension bridge. Suspension bridges work by using a force called tension. Tension is just pulling something tight. Suspension bridges are made of a deck that's hung or suspended from thick cables that stretch from one side of the bridge to the other. These cables are supported by tall towers and then are held down tightly or anchored on both ends. Suspension bridges are strong because the force on the bridge gets spread out. The weight of the cars or trains or horses, whatever's traveling across it, pulls on the cables, creating tension. Those cables then pull down on the towers and also pull on the anchors on either end of the bridge to hold up the deck. I could go on and on about all kinds of clever bridges, but basically, bridges are strong not only because they're made of strong materials, but also because of the smart designs dreamed up and planned by engineers. So thanks for asking, Hannah, and thank you for hanging out with us at SciShow Kids. See you next time.
So again, as you think about your specific audience and your setting, how could this video in particular enhance some things that you are going to engage with your students? Lots of vocabulary, so you can talk more about tension and trust and anchored, were a couple of words that stood out. You can do a geography lesson on where are the famous bridges, including the one she just showed that is close to me, San Francisco. I'm here in Sacramento. And then you can think about all the mathematical concepts that are in there as she described triangles and the different shapes of the bridges. So really thinking about how this video or any video that depicts bridges, if that's one of the challenges that your kids are going to explore, can give some of that background context as you go into your bridge challenge. And then they start to create even more in-depth bridges because they now understand how to build a strong bridge based on some of the vocabulary from that particular video. And so thinking about those activities, really wanting us to think about how STEAM is just every day, all day. It is in things that we do routinely, such as cooking, where we're measuring and counting and observing what happens when the water boils. We're thinking about STEAM during bath times as toys float and that there's water play going on. And that maybe you were outside in the mud and suddenly the water turns brown because there's been mud on your feet. All of those things are a part of STEAM in our everyday adventures in our routines, our nature walks where we're collecting leaves and rocks and berries and acorns, things like that. And we're sorting and observing maybe what happens to a leaf after we keep it inside in a cup for a couple of months. Does the color change? Does the texture change? And so really thinking about how we are already doing many things that are created to STEAM. We are thinking about recyclables and how we're building with blocks. And when we're at grocery stores, how can our kids compare sizes and prices? There's a big jar of maybe jam or jelly compared to a smaller jar, and what's the prices and what are the numbers that you see in those prices. And mealtime is always a favorite to be able to count the utensils for family members that might be joining. Maybe they're helping cook and they're measuring out some of those ingredients. So really thinking about how we are already doing STEAM every single day as we go about our daily routines. So this is a video that kind of does an overview of STEAM that I thought was
What is STEAM education? In a simple way to explain, STEAM education is a way of teaching and a way of learning that combines science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. We can think of STEAM education as an adventure, where the most important part of our adventure is our journey. Our goal is to arrive at a destination, but how we get there and the roads that we take are different for everyone because we all think very differently. Along this road, we make mistakes, and sometimes we get lost, but this is where we learn the most, and this is where we begin to understand that it is okay sometimes to get lost. Our friends on this road are science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. They guide us to our final destination. Some friends are closer to us than others, so we might like to ask our math friend for help, or maybe our engineering friend. But in the end, we become best friends with everyone. When we finally arrive at our destination, we discover that it is not the end, but the beginning to more questions and more adventures. STEAM education inspires us to explore the world and see it differently. It helps us to learn in a fun way and work with each other to solve problems and take risks, learn from our mistakes, and change the world. As STEAM Inspirations, we are about teachers, parents, and students. We are all about you.
So I always appreciate that video because it's that constant reminder that STEAM is really about that journey. What journey are we taking our children on so that they do take those risks, that they are inquisitive about the world around them. And it's the 5 components of STEAM that really allow us to get to that destination. And then when we get to the destination, have even more questions that we want to explore. So again, I always appreciate that very simple video that explains STEAM. So let's chat. What activities do you already do that involve STEAM? What are some new ideas that maybe you're excited to try? So if you want to give me some ideas in the chat, I would love to hear what you're thinking. And I will go back and check to see what questions I missed. Someone said even with sound, no sound, it made sense, but with sound, it was even better. Someone loved the song. Yeah, the kiddos always love music. So anytime we can incorporate music into those activities, we will absolutely get an even more captivated audience. And again, feel free to ask those questions in the Q&A as well. Lisa, are you seeing any questions? Let's see. I thought I missed one. Gloria, oops. Sorry, Gloria had a question and it was, if I can get back to it. Oh, Gloria asked about doing an experiment by getting color out of vegetables. Again, that would be a lovely one. We can incorporate the thought of nutrition. I'm thinking about some of maybe not the traditional vegetables that our students are accustomed to eating, but what are those other ones that we can bring in where they can explore something new? And maybe you have a cooking tasting as part of that STEAM activity. And then you do something with getting the color out of it. So that would be an awesome one. Let's see, are there other questions that or other ideas that you guys have for exploring STEAM? Wind play, light and shadow play, always a fun one to try and explain what a shadow is and those sorts of things. Flowers work well to explore colors, absolutely. Liking the idea of building the bridge, cloud in a jar sounds like another activity that someone has already explored. So again, really kite making to explore that cause and effect, the air and the movement, absolutely. Owl pellets as an activity. I'm not sure what that means. I have my own thoughts about that one, Tracy. So you'll have to tell us more about owl pellets. Investigating those questions where that kids ask, letting them see when the experiment fails. That's a really big part of STEAM, is going through that process of that trial and error, because our kids, once it is not successful or something falls or it doesn't land the way that they wanted it to, they really have to then go back and rethink. And that's a part of us exploring that logical thinking, that creativity, that perseverance, where they're determined to redo their experiment to see if something different happens. So we absolutely want them to be successful, of course, in some of their experiments, but then also to have those failures, because that creates that deeper level of learning for our students. Pizza making was one. Watching the changes as things cook, talking about those differences, absolutely. So thank you for So thank you for all of those ideas. Hopefully I have generated maybe a thought of some other things that you guys could do in terms of, again, always hands-on is probably going to yield the audience that will stay attuned a little bit longer. Again, adding that music, adding those art components for sure will get us a more captive audience. The end of this presentation has a couple different resources that if you're interested, again, the PowerPoint will be provided on the resources tab. A couple of books that I really appreciate that are related to STEAM learning, specifically for our youngest learners, are listed here. 10 Black Dots by Donald Cruz. Mix It Up is a great one. What do you do with an idea? Again, to spark our kids generating those ideas that we can then decide which activity they can actually follow through with. So those are, again, just a few book ideas. And then if you're wanting some website resources, again, the videos that I got, you can get those from YouTube, but there's a couple different websites that have not just STEAM, but they are specific to young learners. So making sure that we have those activities that kids can grasp at their developmental level that are age appropriate. And so PBS Kids has an entire section on STEAM and arts. The National Association for Education of Young Children, again, directly connected to STEAM and STEM. There's a preschool STEM, specifically, again, for the youngest learners. There's science snacks. So that one explores science as it relates to some of the different food activities that you can do. And then the last one is that project learning tree, where it is mostly geared toward nature and some of the STEM activities that can occur. So that is my presentation. We've got about 3 minutes, and so I'm going to see, again, back to the chat if there are any other. Oh, gardening. Yes, gardening is always great to get those little hands dirty and to explore how things happen over time, and with watering or not watering, and too much sunlight and things like that. So definitely gardening is a way to explore those STEAM activities. Six Sticks is a fun math book. Heather says to explore creating something using only 6 sticks. Ooh, that would be fun. Thank you, Michelle, for your thank you. And again, I encourage you guys to explore some of those website resources. And I appreciate those because they're specific to preschool. So you don't have to venture out too far to find that age group because they are already geared toward that particular age group. So thank you again. The PowerPoint will be available on the resources tab. Encourage you to continue to explore. Encourage you yourself to have a love of STEAM that ends up filtering through to your kiddos, because we do know that through STEAM and all 5 of those components, our kids really are doing their deepest learning, and they're able to have some of that regular decision making in their everyday lives happen when they're able to do those hands-on, being creative, being curious about how the world operates. And so, again, at this young age, we can already start to foster that love of STEAM that will be with them as they continue on to those later grades and later in life. So thank you guys so much for allowing me to spend part of your Friday. Hope that you guys have a wonderful weekend wherever you are headed, and that you get some rest and relaxation and continue to support our kids in the, I'm sure, most amazing ways that you already are doing. So again, thank you for the love. Thank you for the hearts. I do appreciate all of that. Take care, you guys. See you soon.
Hey,
Awesome. I knew I needed to speed myself up the first time I had to stop, and I was like, oh my goodness. So I didn't get to show the rest of the one video, but
oh, but you
timing
did a
wise,
great job with that.
yeah,
That was
timing wise, and I
excellent.
apologize for the couple of hiccups with technology. So thank you
That
for
was odd
texting
that
me.
that sound didn't work, and then the black boxes were odd too. Never seen that.
Yeah, and I don't know what caused the black
They said
boxes.
that it might have been that you optimized the presentation.
Oh, I did push the button for
Okay.
optimizing. Okay, so
So the way she
note
fixed
for
it
self.
was she went in and allowed all to share and then changed it back to only you can share. And somehow that
Oh,
fixed
okay.
it.
Okay. Well,
So we
that's
didn't have
well,
to reshare, thank goodness.
yes. Well, I'm glad it all ended up working out. That's awesome. I appreciate talking about STEAM. It's that and inclusion are 2 of my favorites. So,
Oh my gosh, you did an awesome job. I learned some stuff. I didn't know what a
yay.
suspension bridge was.
What was suspension bridges? Yeah.
Yeah.
And as I was picking the videos for this, I was thinking about, like, even though it's STEAM, like, oh, you could do so many other lessons from, geography and
Absolutely.
math and all of those things with some of those. So hopefully people are
That is so important
encouraged.
too, because they have little time in the day and they can
Yeah.
find things. Nice.
hmm So yeah, well, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the symposium.
Yes, and you're welcome to join.
Yes, I will. I actually got to go potty, and then I'll
Yeah,
come back on for
I
the
hear
rest
you.
of it. I'll take a quick bio
Okay.
break. Okay, see
All
you
right.
soon. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye bye.